and good to see everybody right here on 5 Plus. Time for another edition of 5 Outdoors. I've had this one in mind for quite a while. Brent is the author of The Grand Prairie, which is a book that goes deep into the history, the rich history of Arkansas duck hunting, but he's also the co-host of the Standard Sportsman. I say a new, but it's been around for a couple of years, right? A podcast talking about all things waterfowl, waterfowl management, and most importantly, conservation here in Arkansas. Brent, good morning to you. The duck season has come to an end, and everyone's kind of feeling those post-duck season blues. These are those moments that I think it's really good to try to find a reason to be optimistic and try to look forward. But after a tough year like this, that may be kind of hard for some folks. Before we go into what we can do to turn this thing around, let's talk about this past duck season. From your perspective, how was it?
Personally, not too bad. Not too bad. Now, I will preface that with January, and the weather in January really helped. Not that we got an influx of ducks, because even the aerial surveys by the Game and Fish don't show that we did. We did pick up some ducks, but we're still well below the long-term average. But it made the ducks get active. And that mild weather we had in December really muddled things as far as success goes. But January, we got some snow, we got some ice, we got some thaws, we got some cold weather. Ducks moved around, and we're able to find some success, but still not seeing the number of ducks that we would like to see on the landscape.
So before we even got to duck season, the odds were kind of stacked against us with just a low population to begin with. That's not necessarily anything new to this year. That's been happening for the past several years. What would you attribute that to?
Yeah, the biggest thing is habitat in the prairie pothole region. It's been very dry. Some places in severe drought that are big producers for the ducks that we get in Arkansas. You're talking about, Southwest Saskatchewan, Southeast Alberta, bone dry, really, really pitiful shape. And ducks can't produce if there's not the potholes and the little wetlands for them to make babies. It gets really tough population wise. And we're talking about an almost a 50% decline since a real high point in 2016. 2016, we had 11.8 million mallards in the mid-continent mallard breeding population. This past year, we had 6.6. And that bump up came from a region that doesn't feed ducks to Arkansas.
So in less than 10 years, we've saw basically a 50% decline. That should be
Yeah,
alarming to just about anybody, right?
it is. It needs to be very alarming. And I think the past couple of seasons have caught a lot of duck hunters' attention and wondering, how do we keep hunting for 60 days, and how do we keep hunting with two mallard hens and a lemon? How do we keep uh, doing the same old when we're seeing a population shrink and shrink and shrink? And then this year, we ran into a situation where the ducks hung north of us in bigger numbers than normal. We've had this whole consideration of short stopping ducks in Missouri and some other places, and this year we really saw it. That early cold front got them to Missouri. They found what they needed, and they never really left. And we saw the numbers reflected here in Arkansas.
That wasn't even anecdotal. I mean, I think Missouri, the conservation has some actual statistics that show they got there and they just really just never even considered leaving.
Yeah,
I want to go back to something. We talked about the drought conditions in the prairies. Even more concerning, those farmers that they've seen this wetland, what was a wetland, become dry, and so now they're just plowing through what used to be great habitat. That's not reversible. We can't go back, right?
it depends. It depends. Now, some of it, if they fill it in and level it, odds are that is ever a wetland again is pretty slim. Now, if they just worked that ground up from an ag standpoint and left it as a low depression in their particular farm, they just happened to be dry this year, which was substantial amount. That could, with a good wet spring, a snow melt, that could be returned to wetland. The problem about it is it won't have the grassland around it, and ducks need that to hide. If they can't hide, the predators have pretty easy pickings.
Really feels like there's just a lot of things working against ducks right now.
Incredible amount.
So not a great season, a lot of challenges. Where do we go from here? For those that care about the resource, they don't not necessarily those that just care about killing, but those that care about the resource. What encouragement can you give those folks? What advice can you give on ways to plug in, on things to do that that could actually be tangibly helpful?
Yeah, I think a big thing is really managing how you hunt, and that's a pretty wide ranging deal because everybody associates how we get this thing on back on track. We got to donate a lot of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. Conservation organizations need it. There's no question, but there's things you can do personally. I know clubs that decided this year we're not shooting 4 mallards, we're shooting three. We're not shooting mallard hens. Period. You shoot one. It's back like when I was in college in the '90s. There was actually a huge campaign. Delta Waterfowl put it on to put a coffee can at your club, shoot a hen, name a penalty, $5, a dollar, quarter, whatever. But if you shoot one, you throw money in the can. Then you take the can at the end of the year, dump it on the table, and say, okay, this is how much money we're giving towards ducks. And so maybe controlling some of these controllable pieces, management of pressure, huge thing that we're facing. So if this is the new normal, which we don't know, it may be. If it's the new normal, you're looking at a situation where you're going to have to decide how am I going to hunt going forward? I'm not going back to glory days. I'm going to have to do things different myself and to see if I can keep ducks around longer. And a big piece of that is providing habitat and managing pressure.
So a lot of things working against ducks that we can't control, some things we can control. Talk to me about the culture in Arkansas. It's rich with tradition, but it feels like in recent years, it's not exactly the thing that we should be proud of.
No, and a lot of that, and I hate to kind of pigeonhole it, but it is the truth. We've got a mess going on with our public land hunting opportunities. Uh, there's other states that have draws, they have quotas for non-residents, and Arkansas's got themselves in a situation where it's almost a free for all, and we're kind of seeing the impact of that follow it with. And it's not necessarily overcrowding. That was this year, early in the year. Dave Donaldson Black River was the only public land that really had water. Everybody went there, including non-residents. Completely, totally overcrowded. Ducks stayed for about 2 days, and then they were gone. Some of the other WMAs didn't get water until around Christmas, but once they did, everybody piled in there. Ducks didn't stay very long. We've got to figure out a way to spread some of that out, and some of that gets back to culture. I think we have a lot of people spending time in the public woods that I don't know that duck hunting is their priority. I think it's riding around in their boat. I think it's turning on their jam box and hanging out and drinking beer or whatever they're doing. And we're seeing that really impact the ducks to where they're not incented to go in there anymore, and that's going to be a real shame. That's a big part of our legacy in the state is our public hunting opportunities, but it's turned into just a circus. I don't know any other way to put it, and we're paying the price for that.
How do we fix that? Where do you even begin?
I don't know. I mean, hunters have are not very good at policing themselves, unfortunately, and not to shame, and place this in an age demographic, but a lot of this has to do with a younger audience that is just kind of running amok in there. And I think they got into the sport for it's cool. It's obviously a cool thing to do. You and I both love it and spend a lot of time with it and can grasp the whole experience. I think there was a crowd that has come to the sport that didn't have the mentorship or the leadership to kind of show them the ropes, and this is how it operates. And that's what you're seeing in the woods. You're seeing people that don't know what you're doing is a kind of a broad statement, but there is a definitely a level of that, and it's impacting the people that really want to be in there, really want to hunt, really want to experience duck hunting for what it is, and then you have all this other stuff going on, and it's impacting it. It's really hard to watch and hard to see when you see the videos on social media. You see videos that don't make it to social media that come across in text groups that you're just blown away by the knuckleheadness that's going on, and that's an offshoot of culture for sure. But how we get it back right, that's a great question without heavy regulation, which nobody really wants.
It feels like a vicious cycle that this contingent of folks are running off. I don't want to call them the purists, but the people that have respect for the resource and the land. If those folks are run off, we're not buying duck stamps. We're not buying things that do inevitably contribute back to conservation. And at that point, you're just digging a big old rut. And I can't help but just be concerned that the problems we're facing now are only going to get compounded in the years to come if this continues, which is what gives me a lot of hope for your podcast. You have a lot of incredible conversations that sometimes they're not easy conversations, but it's the reality of the situation. And we start talking about the ethics and we start talking about respect and the big picture that maybe this generation or this contingent of folks just was never exposed to. So tell me about you and your co-host, Case and Short, your whole purpose in doing this. You're both successful folks. You got other things you could be spending your time on. And I don't think you're getting rich doing a podcast, but you do it and you do it really well because of your heart in this. Say more about that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the biggest part. Both lifelong duck hunters that did have that mentorship chain. The grandfathers. Cason's grandfather is in the Waterfowl Hall of Fame in Arkansas. I grew up with a family that duck hunted, and when you experience doing this sport the quote unquote right way, you have such an appreciation for it beyond how many ducks you kill. Now we're hunters; we like to shoot them. I mean, that don't mistake that. But you realize there's so much more to it in those precious 60 days you get to spend. And I've lived through the 30-day seasons. I was in college when we had 30-day seasons. There's a whole contingent of duck hunters that doesn't know anything but the 60-day season. So that passion, and just having I think our heart in the right place related to ducks and geese and the habitat. I think that led us to have these conversations we were having offline. And why don't we take this and do it online? And then we both have incredible connections in the industry, so we've been able to bring on guests that really shed some light from different angles, whether it's within the waterfowling industry, the waterfowl science community, and then kind of legendary people within the state that have a lot of historical perspective. We've been able to put that and bring those voices to the masses, so to speak, and it's gone really well. We've had a lot of fun doing it, and really appreciate the opportunity to share our passion and also showcase people that have the similar passion, to show what the sport can be or should be, and that's probably the biggest piece of it.
It feels like there are conversations taking place in the broader waterfowl community now that originated with you and Kaysen. And one of those that comes to mind is this idea of let's try to avoid shooting hens. And I don't know if that originated with somewhere else, but in my mind, I don't think I heard a lot about that until I heard you and Kaysen talking about it. And now there's these like grassroots sticker campaigns and some really cool stuff happening around the area. So I think you're doing some incredible work. Tell folks that are watching here on Five Plus where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, it's the Standard Sportsman. You can find it basically anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of the other channels. It'll be available. The website is www.thestandardsportsman.com, and then we're on all the social media channels too at the Standard Sportsman. So you can track us down by any of those. We release the podcast every week, which is a lot different than many in the duck hunting world podcast wise. You see some guys jump in and out and do one every couple months. We're there every week. We've got a list of guests we sifted through the other day that's 20 people deep, topics and guests. So we try to stay top of mind because I think the stuff that we talk about and what the show's about needs to be top of mind with our whole waterfowling community. So we're going to stay at it.
Cool. Brett, thanks so much for your time. Maybe we'll plan to have you back maybe late summer, early fall, maybe when the new B-pop numbers come out and
Mm-hmm.
you can do some prognosticating what the next season may have in store for us. Brett, thanks so much for your time. Standard Sportsman, Brent Birch, the co-host there, as well as the author of The Grand Prairie. We'll see you guys back here next week for another edition of Five Outdoors.